Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we are diving into a truly wild idea, one that tries to build a bridge between two of the biggest puzzles in science. What in the world is dark matter, and what is the fundamental engine that drives evolution? So, the paper we're looking at kicks off with a really provocative question. For decades, we've been hunting for some kind of exotic particle to explain dark matter. But what if we've been looking for the wrong thing entirely? What if dark matter isn't a thing at all, but just a weird property of space-time, an illusion cast by the way our universe is projected? Kind of like a shadow on a cave wall. And right here is where things get really ambitious. What if that exact same property of space-time, that same shadow-casting mechanic, is also the reason complex systems, like whole ecosystems, can learn and adapt? And get this, what if it can do it without the classic Darwinian survival of the fittest? Okay, so how on earth do you connect cosmology with biology like that? Well, to get a handle on this new idea, we first have to look at the theory it's building on, and more importantly, a huge piece of the puzzle that's been missing. It all starts with this framework, TCGS-SEQUENTION. I know, it's a mouthful, but the core concept is this. Our 3D universe that we see and live in is just a projection, a shadow, and it's being cast from a deeper, four-dimensional reality that's completely static. In this picture, strange things like dark matter aren't some extra stuff floating around, they're just artifacts, basically distortions in the shadow itself. Now, the way this shadow gets projected is all described by a mathematical rule called the mu function. You can kind of think of it like the lens on a projector. It controls how the light, or in this case, gravity, gets bent and warped as it hits the screen. And the really incredible part? The math works. It perfectly describes what astronomers see out there in the cosmos without having to invent dark matter to fill in the gap. So here's the problem, and it's a big one. The theory gives us the math for the shadow, but it tells us absolutely nothing about the projector. Why does the mu function behave the way it does? What physical process is actually causing it? It's a perfect description of what, but with a total blank for why. It's a law without a cause. And this is where the whole story takes a massive left turn. To find a physical reason for this cosmic rule, the paper suggests we have to look somewhere completely different. We're talking evolutionary biology. We need to talk about a theory called natural induction. This idea proposes a way for physical systems to adapt and learn from things that have happened to them. But the crucial part is it's not about genes or reproduction. It's all about pure physics. How materials themselves can hold on to a memory of stress in their actual physical structure. So here's how it works at its core. You've got a network. When you stress it out, it almost instantly snaps into a new stable state. That's the fast part. But the connections in that network are a little bit gooey. Think of silly putty. Over time, they slowly deform and creep in response to that stress. And that slow creep literally bakes the memory of what happened right into the system structure, changing how it's going to react next time. Okay, so now we have these two big ideas on the table. A theory of the universe that works but is missing its physical engine, and a physical theory of adaptation that's all about material memory. This is where the paper makes its big move. It argues that natural induction is the missing engine for the cosmic map. They basically built a dictionary, a one-to-one translation between the physics of adaptation and the geometry of the cosmos. So the stress on a network becomes the exact equivalent of a gravitational field. But the most important connection is this. The physical state of the material, whether it's stiff and elastic or soft and flowing, directly maps onto that mysterious mu function we were just talking about. And this leads to a conclusion that is totally counterintuitive. It completely flips things on their head. In places with really high gravity, like near a galaxy, the 4D medium that's projecting our universe yields and flows like a liquid. Its shadow looks like normal physics to us. But way out in the empty voids of space, where gravity is weak, that medium is stiff and rigid. And it's that very stiffness in the projector that we see as an anomaly in our shadow, an anomaly we've been calling dark matter. This quote from the paper just says it all. Dark matter isn't some extra stuff. It's the shadow of a rigid, four-dimensional reality that simply hasn't been pushed hard enough to start flowing at. Now, as if that wasn't mind-bending enough, to make this whole thing stick together, you also have to totally rethink one of the most fundamental things we experience: time itself. Okay, this part is a little tricky, but it's really cool. Remember how natural induction has two timescales, a fast reaction and a slow memory-forming creep? Well, the cosmic theory says that 4D reality is static. There is no time there.
So how do you square that? The paper does it by mapping time onto geometric depth. All the fast changes we see are just things happening on the surface of our 3D projection. But that slow process of learning and adapting, that corresponds to changes in the deep geometry of that underlying 4D space.
So what this means is that learning isn't a process that's actually unfolding in time. It's more like our universe's projection is sinking into deeper, more stable, pre-existing grooves within that static 4D block. From this point of view, evolution isn't some march forward through time. It's a geometric exploration of a map that's already been drawn.
Right, this is all a fantastic story, but for it to be science, you have to be able to test it. And what makes this synthesis so powerful is that it makes two very specific, brand new predictions that we can actually go and look for. First up is something called the WLF signature. Remember that silly putty idea, that viscoelastic property? Well, materials like that change with temperature in a very specific, predictable way. The theory predicts that if you run a lab experiment, the speed of evolution should change with temperature following that exact same mathematical curve. If we see that, it would be a huge smoking gun that the forces behind evolution are, at their very root, physical and material. The second prediction is about finding what it calls associative spandrels. Think about how your brain works. A certain smell can trigger a whole memory, not just one isolated fact. Natural induction says evolution should work the same way. It shouldn't just produce useful traits. It should also drag along completely useless, neutral traits, just because they happen to be linked to the useful ones in that deep 4D geometry. Finding these kinds of evolutionary tag-alongs would be incredibly strong evidence for this model.
So, what's the big takeaway here? This whole idea shifts our perspective on, well, everything. It suggests the universe isn't just a story of random chance and particles bumping around. Instead, it might be one single, vast viscoelastic system that's just slowly relaxing into its most stable shape. In this picture, dark matter is just the stiffness of the cosmos, and evolution isn't a random walk, but a geometric creep into forms that were, in some sense, always inevitable. It's a huge idea, and it changes, well, pretty much everything.